Hey everybody, this is Maxine Taylor, and I've got my Trumpology report ready to go. But first, I have an announcement I'd love to share with you. Many of you have asked me over the years if I would teach you astrology, and I haven't taught astrology in a while. And I realize that I really do want to share my 50 plus years of experience as an astrologer, as a teacher. And so if you go to my website, MaxineTaylor.com, you will see that I am offering astrology webinars. And the first one is going to be on the 18th of September. Now, let me tell you what it's about. I want to share with people, no matter where they're at, this very first webinar, the series of webinars, is designed for the person who knows absolutely nothing about astrology, because they have to start at the beginning. So I call these the foundation webinars. I'm going to cover all 12 signs and explain them. I'll show you how to write the symbols for them. You have to be able to know that. I'm going to share with you the information on the planets that rule them. This is vitally important. I'll be talking about not just the planets, but the nodes, the vertex, the anti-vertex, and finally, I'm going to go over the 12 houses of the zodiac and show you how to read everybody in your life in your own birth chart. So if you are a novice and know only perhaps your sun sign, this is the webinar for you. Those of you who already know this information, hang in there, because I'm going to be offering webinars on chart interpretation and forecasting. But first, I'm going to do these. So, MaxineTaylor.com. Now, let's talk about Trump. This is going to be quite another powerful month for Trump. I'm going to break it down slowly and then show you why I think it's well, you know how I've been saying all along, we ain't seen nothing yet. This may be more of the same. So, and many of you are saying, well, yeah, I get that, of course. Let's look, first of all, at the path of the sun. Now, the sun is the center of our life. It is it deals with our ego, and in the first house, which is the most personal point in the chart, when the sun is in the first house, this is a me first position for it. Many people who are shy find this very helpful because they're able to put themselves first. This indicates that the center of Trump's world is himself. You might say, well, there's nothing new about that, except that it's in his first house, and this empowers him even more so. Hang in there. I'll explain this step by step, as I said, and then tie it all in together. Now, on the 16th of the month, just right after the lunation, the sun enters his second house of money. And the sun is the giver of life. So when the sun is in his second house, he's going to make more money. The potential is absolutely there, without question. Now, on the new moon, which is the 28th of the month, the sun sits on his Neptune. Neptune in the second house is traditionally a non-materialistic attitude toward money, which is very interesting. With Neptune, Neptune is the dream. Neptune either dissolves what it touches, or it can create more because it's fulfilling the dream. And so on the new moon, the 28th of this month, we're going to see more income for him, perhaps, more opportunities to create more money, particularly when it comes from other sources. Okay. Now, the full moon, very, very interesting. And I'm going to talk more about the full moon at the very end of this Trumpology report because it ties into a major configuration in his chart. And if you watch the charts on each of the videos on each of the 12 signs that are up on my YouTube channel, or if they're not up at the time I'm recording this, they will be very shortly. You will see that this configuration affects everybody on the planet. So the full moon is between the 13th and 14th of the month. I say that because it depends on what time zone you're in. It falls in his 7th house of open enemies, of other people. It's in 21 degrees of Pisces. And so the full moon brings things to a head. Well, the 7th house deals with partnership. It deals with open enemies. And when we think of partnership, I think of marriage. And so this can involve Melania. The 7th house is also the second child. And of course, this would be Ivanka. Open enemies could be anybody because it's how he sees his open enemies. So it may not be leaders of foreign nations, but people he knows, and that it comes to a head at that point. Okay, that's the full moon and the new moon and the sun. So there's more ego involved and more money involved. Now let's talk about Mercury. Mercury is our conscious mind. Wherever it is, that's what we think about and talk about. Well, it's been in and is still in his 1st house. And so he thinks about himself and talks about himself. And you might say, well, that's part of his nature. He does that naturally. It's been more so. If you've watched the news, it's been more so. Because remember, quite recently, going back to the sun, he declared himself to be the chosen one of God. Hello. There's the sun in the 1st house. Okay. He's the one who said, I'm the only one who can save us. Sun in the 1st. And it ties in with Mercury, talking about himself from that new, well, I don't know that it's a new perspective, but I hadn't heard it the way he verbalized it. I think it was last week. Okay, on the 10th of September, Mercury, what we think about and talk about, enters his 2nd house of money. And it too sits on Neptune, which means he has ideas about how to create money from other people. Those of you who study astrology, I'm saying from other people because both Neptune and Jupiter, which are what are triggered in his 2nd house, rule his 8th house of other people's money. So it's using other people's money to create more money for him on the 17th and the 24th. So on the 17th, it sits on Neptune. Again, Neptune is obfuscation also, okay? It can be camouflage. It can be a smoke screen, but it can be the dream come true. And so on the 28th, the sun triggers it and brings it to light. On the 17th, Mercury, what we think about and talk about, comes up with new ways of creating money through other people's money sources. And on the 24th, sits on Jupiter, the great benefic, which can bring more money to him. On the 27th, Mercury enters his 3rd house of communication. Mercury rules the 3rd house in the natural zodiac of communication, and there will be more communication from him. You might say, but we already hear from him. Well, this is going to be more. Okay, that's that. Let's look here. Excuse me. At Venus. Venus is love. Venus is money. Venus is the lesser benefic. It's one of the good guys. Jupiter is the greater benefic. And so Venus is in his 1st house. And when Venus is in your 1st house, you love you. It's been in his 1st house. And that probably is what prompted the proclamation of being the chosen one of God. But this is just loving himself. It is also, and that is not a negative thing in someone's chart traditionally, because if you love yourself, you can love others. So with Venus in the first house, he's loving him. Venus rules sugar. Venus rules indulgence. And so I always tell people when Venus is in your first house, just watch what you eat, because there's a tendency to overindulge, whether in food or with looking at yourself. On the 9th, Venus enters the second house, and that is the house that it traditionally rules. Well, this can bring money. It's that simple. On his Neptune, on the 18th. And Venus on Neptune can bring the fulfillment of a financial dream. It can be romance. But since it's in the second house of money, it would be the romance of money, I would say. And then on the 28th, Venus sits on Jupiter. Venus, the lesser benefic, sits on Jupiter, the greater benefic. And this is going to be helpful to his money. Now, Mars and Jupiter. Mars is the fighter. Mars is the warrior. Wherever Mars is in your chart is what you fight with and fight for. And with it in his first house, he is fighting for himself. With all of the stuff that's surfaced, he is fighting for himself. And wherever Mars is what comes first to you. Okay. Sun, center of life. Mercury, who and what you think about. Venus, who you love. Mars, who you hate or who you fight with or for. Now, on a more esoteric level, whatever you hate in another person, you have in yourself. We know that it's a universal law. However, this is him just letting it fly. And this will, Mars has a 2-year cycle, and it doesn't return to the same place at the same month as it did 2 years prior. But 2 years ago, at some point, Mars was in his first house. And because Mars in his birth chart is so close to the ascendant, which is him, in his 12th house, Mars is hidden. This Mars, the orbiting Mars, the transiting Mars, is not hidden. And that's why I'm saying we ain't seen nothing yet. On the 23rd of the month, I'm looking at my dates here. Before the new moon, Mars moves into his second house of money. Now, when Mars is in your second house, you fight for your money. You create more money. There is more income coming for him. Jupiter, the great benefic, is in his 4th house of home, family, and real estate. It does not yet make aspect with his 4th house planets, but it will. And so I want to share with you the grand square that Trump has in his chart. Everyone on this planet this month will have either a grand square, which is a square to a square to a square to a square, opposition. It is a balanced configuration. Some people will have a T-cross, meaning if this is a table, it's got 4 table legs. The T-cross has only 3 quote-unquote table legs. And so the empty house is the area where all of this will really function. Let's look at this chart for just a second. We have, at the time of the full moon, now this this configuration is really going to be going on prior to the full moon and even after the full moon. But because the full moon is when things come to a head, we have the full moon on Neptune in his 7th house of open enemies. And this means that, number one, there can be confusion, there can be wishful thinking, and I'm thinking our country's open enemies, Putin, Kim Jong-un, his own personal open enemies. The full moon is in his 7th house of relationships, of contracts. And this can be of concern because it deals with our open enemies. And we don't know what he's going to say. Particularly since directly across from this is the Sun and Mars. Sun, the ego. Mars, the warrior. In opposition to our open enemies. Now, it's balanced because it's a T-cross. However, starting at approximately the 9th of the month, the Sun and Mars are squaring his Uranus, which is a very volatile position, Mars squaring Uranus. It squares his North Node and his South Node, the areas that are karmic justice in the career and home and family. And then Sun squaring Sun. It's actually his ego fighting himself, but it's fighting any other authority figure. Remember, he has to be the leader. He has to do it. He has to do what he wants, when he wants, how he wants, because he has the Sun and Mars in the 1st now, and he will not stop. He's going to do that. Now, he has a Sun-Moon square. He has a Mars-Moon square. So there's going to be frustration and irritation over a land, over a family. Jupiter, the great benefic, while it traditionally blesses people, it deals with a lot of. It expands things. What is it expanding? The home and family situation, which is the moon, emotional, and the South Node, which is very karmic and can involve draining of energy. There can involve loss there. But Jupiter, because it is the great benefic, may bless the family situation, the real estate situation. Okay. The full moon and Neptune in the 7th house. As I mentioned, relationships coming to a head, and Neptune, lack of clarity in his relationships with his open enemies, and also with the public. 7th house is the public. And so we've got this moon squaring Uranus, which is rebellion, squaring the nodes, karmic, squaring the Sun, which is his role as an authority figure. So he's fighting to maintain his role as an authority figure, and he's doing it single-handedly, which is why he said, I'm the only one who can do this. But he does have help from Venus, not from Mars, not at all. From Mercury, maybe, but yes, from the Sun. So he's got a very volatile situation that starts, about, I want to say, the 9th of the month, and continues all through the entire month. I'm looking at my notes up here. Forgive me for looking away, but I want to get the dates clear. The Venusian aspect can be much more long-lasting, and he's loving his whole approach. And I have not put Venus here, but because I wanted to show that the Sun and Mars are why I'm saying we ain't seen nothing yet. Venus, yes, will square these planets in his 10th house, but that's before the full moon. See, he's feeling good before the full moon. And so I'm looking at after the full moon. I don't have a crystal ball and I can't tell you how this is going to manifest. But I do know that astrology is an incredible science, an art and a science. And so the four big areas that are under fire this month, and he's blessed to have this as a grand square to balance it, are himself and his own ego, his home and family, all of his relationships, whether with international open enemies or local open enemies, and his public image and career. These are the four areas, the most important areas in a horoscope. So, and yeah, he will, according to my diurnal charts, be the Republican candidate. So it will be a very interesting race to see who the Democrats put up. And if you haven't seen my video on the 2020 election on YouTube, you might want to take a look at it. And so, dear friends, I hope to see you on my webinars. And until next month, may the stars shine brightly on you and yours.